Terrorism are acts of violence perpetrated on peaceful civilian non-combatants with intent. So these acts of terrorism uh, perpetrated with intent. Intent is a part in this whole process, and that is for furthering some political, ideological, or religious objective. So the objectives are also important. The terrorists, they must be having some political, ideological, or religious objective for committing acts of terrorism. Then there is a debate about the state actors involved in terrorism and the non-state actors involved in terrorism. There is a general agreement that the non-state actors are more considered as a terrorist as compared to the state parties. But obviously, there's a controversy about it, and many intellectuals, many researchers of this field, they also consider state parties as terrorist at the same time, like the governments and the states, they can commit acts of terrorism, and not just the individuals and the groups who are non-state actors. So, if we could sum up like a kind of a definition for terrorism, so obviously terrorism constitute of acts of terrorism with the intent of obviously terrorizing masses, common masses, peaceful civilians, non-combatants, and that is being done by these terrorist groups, or even the states and the governments who are using acts of terrorism to achieve some objective, some goal of maybe ideological or religious or political nature. So the acts are the means to the end, not the end in itself. So terrorism is for some purpose. Terrorism is not just a kind of isolated incident. There is a philosophy behind it. There is a ideology behind it, and there are political goals behind it. So you could see the organizations, worldwide organizations, being involved in terrorism. For example, IRA, that is Irish Republican Army, and that has ethnic objectives, and they were fighting a war with the British mainland. And there are groups, religious groups, more known for committing acts of terrorism, like Al Qaeda, like these days Daesh, ISIS, and many other such organizations. So this ideology part is the primary condition. And another primary condition, acts of violence must be committed against peaceful civilian non-combatants. Non-combatants. This is the condition. Two militant groups which are fighting each other, and maybe they are like committing murder, bombings, other acts of violence, but they are not like you can say that they are like a kind of proper comes under this definition of terrorism. But again, like these definitions and explanations are not standard. Everybody are seeing terrorism from their own angle. Some might consider non-state actors are only candidates for labeling them as terrorists, and the non-state, the state actors are not, they cannot commit, and maybe if they are committing the same type of acts of violence, even then they are not being ranked as terrorists. So there are like kind of many examples. The PLO, and that was an organization uh, for the liberation of Palestine. And obviously, that organization committed acts of terror, but organization, the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization, became an official party on behalf of the Palestinian people to negotiate with their enemy, and their enemy was obviously Israel. So they got a legitimate position, and later on, Hamas these days is like considered as a terrorist organization and not as a legitimate party on behalf of the Palestinian people, because obviously there's a government situated in West Bank, and that is more like kind of a legitimate body in a way. But there's a confusing arguments about for or against the state and the organizations. Even some states become a kind of a likely candidate to be ranked as terrorist organizations, and sometimes like the organizations who started as terrorist organizations but later on become a kind of a former, like IRA has a political wing, that is Sinn Féin, and that is a legitimate organization, and for obviously achieving some political purpose in a way. So there is no broad consensus about it, but maybe everybody has his or her own arguments in favor or against others' argument. Thank you.